Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, Dynasty. I am your host, Heath Cummings. I am joined today by the Matts, Matt Cooper at Couch Scouts Fantasy Football, Matthew Rupert at Matthew Rupert FF. Those are their Twitter handles. Both of these guys, a part of Couch Scouts Fantasy Football. You've seen Matt Cooper on the show before, and I just want to give you guys a chance to start. First off, thank you for being here. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus. I think it's been 10 days since we last had FFT Dynasty, and so it's good to have you guys here to get the show going again. Just tell everybody, and Matt, I'll start with you. Tell everybody, what they can find at Couch Scouts FF.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's one of my favorite shows to be a guest on, and appreciate you continuing to invite me back. So, Couch Scouts, we launched our website in September of this year, and really our philosophy at Couch Scouts, we think scouting is kind of the key to Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you can scout really well, you're going to dominate your rookie draft, and if you dominate your rookie draft year after year after year, you're going to continue to accrue value on your roster, and you're going to end up creating that dynasty that everybody's after. So that's our philosophy. And on the website, we want to provide a bunch of tools and resources to help you do that. So some of the things that we offer, we have a all 22 film room that it's Devy if you play that format. So we have some underclassmen, offensive players, freshmen and sophomores, and then IDP. So I didn't know of anywhere else where you could go scout all 22 on IDP players. And so if you're listening and you play in an IDP league, we have an IDP film room on our website. We also put together a rookie guide. So last year was our first year doing it. And we scouted, I think it was about 70 prospects, and put film grades on each guy, in-depth trait by trait breakdown, strengths and weaknesses, where we would rank them, where we would draft them. So it's kind of meant to be the ultimate cheat sheet to your rookie draft. And we're going to be doing that again this year. So members on the website, on the Scout Potato package, will get access to our rookie guide when we release that. We do some one-on-one consultations, so you can go on there and book a 30-minute meeting with one of our site owners to kind of just get some advice on your dynasty roster. We'll pull up your roster. We'll talk strategy. So those are some of the things we offer. We also have a bonus podcast. So we have a main podcast that's public for everybody that we do every single week. And then we have a bonus show that's just for site members. And right now we're going through what we're calling our Inside the Prospect series. So we're breaking down film on the podcast for a lot of these rookies. And we're kind of doing some of the big names on the main show, and then covering a lot of the sleepers for our site members. So the juicy names, the sleepers, the Bucky Irvings, we hold that back for people who are subscribed to the site. And actually right now, so because you've been so generous to ask us on the show a bunch of different times, and Heath is one of my favorite people, and we want to give you guys a chance to check this out. We're actually running a promotion right now. So if you use the code FFT on the couchscouts.com website, the first 50 people that use that code are going to get 50% off. So you can sign up awesome. This is for our annual packages. So you can sign up for a whole year with Couch Scouts for 50% off. Use the code FFT, but you got to be
awesome. Quick. Appreciate you guys doing that. First 50 people, go do that. Miguel is in the YouTube chat and says, let's do 2 episodes a week. And yes, Miguel, that's a great idea. You know what? I think we'll start next week, Tuesdays and Fridays next week. You're going to get FFT Dynasty here on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you guys for your support of the show. I would ask that you continue that support with some 5-star reviews over on Spotify. And if you have a question and you have a 5-star review, I will be answering those at the end of the month. We've got a one-man mailbag coming up at the end of the month. That's enough about what's coming up. What's on today's show, we're talking 2025 rookies. I talk about this a lot. I watch more college football in January and February than I do the entirety of the college football season, just because of my job watching so much NFL football. So I'm going to be digging into the tape myself a lot, but these guys are ahead of me. I'll just be honest. So I've got some questions for them as I get started digging into this class. Hopefully get you guys prepared for your rookie drafts. And then at the very end of the show, we'll do about 40 minutes of rookies. And at the very end of the show, I've got some of your email questions. A lot of you have been sending in Dynasty email questions. I will answer a few of those at the end of today's show. I want to start with 3 questions. We usually do 3 questions for our guests. We've got 2 guests. I've asked Matt Cooper enough questions on this podcast. Let's get 3 questions for Matthew Rupert.
Sounds
Matthew,
good.
Let's start with this. Just kind of an overview of the 2025 class. And I don't want you to compare it to how 2024 performed, but more, how do you feel about this class now in January compared to how, if you can remember how you felt about the 2024 class last January?
Yeah, it's hard to really compare any class to the 2024 class. To me, it's an outlier class, kind of like 2014 was, with the amount of just elite prospects. At this point, I don't think it's very fair to say that there's not as much elite talent as we had last year, but I do think it's deeper, and it's deeper in different ways. Last year, it was very deep in wide receiver. This year, it's going to be much more deep in running back.
Right.
I think there's a lot of guys that you can get in the 3rd round of this draft or the back end of the 2nd round that you're going to be very happy with. Whereas last year, I felt like there was 2 or 3 guys that I was like excited to get in that kind of range. This year, I think there's going to be a handful more guys that you're going to be excited to add to your roster there.
I like the extra depth. I've got a couple of teams that fell apart this year. And so I have like 6 2025 picks and 3 or 4 2026 picks. And so I'm excited to dig a little bit deeper into this class. What I want to know second is, what would you say when you're evaluating prospects? What's the thing that you think is most generally undervalued by the community?
I think that how I kind of frame scouting is looking at how this prospect wins, and then evaluating from there, how does that translate to the NFL? Like if he's just winning on athleticism, just being a better athlete, running a deep cross and being faster than the other guy because he's playing in college, like that's not going to translate to the NFL. You have to really look at and examine, like, how did they get to this win? Did they win with a really nuanced route, like a good head fake, really good quickness to really break it off and then catch that deep touchdown? Or was he just running faster than the other guy? To me, I'm going to value the guy that used nuance in his routes, because that's something that's going to translate a lot better to the NFL. Once you get to the NFL, you can't just run a deep cross and always be faster than the other guy, because the NFL just has too much talent on the field. So really examining like how this player wins, and similar to like with quarterback. Like, is he winning because he has guys running wide open down the field and he threw for 5 touchdowns in this game? You have to look at it and see, like, was he really going through progressions? Was he throwing in with anticipation into the tight windows? That's the kind of things I look for, and just examining how they win, not just looking at the end result of each play.
The context around the production, I love that. Nasta's in the YouTube chat says, signed up for Couch Scouts. Thanks you guys for the discount code. Thank you, Nasta, for both for supporting our guests and for supporting the podcast. Third question, Matthew. In a Superflex Dynasty League, what is the lowest rookie pick you would accept for Marvin Harrison Jr.?
I just want to get this out front. I want to be buying a bunch of Marvin Harrison this offseason. I feel like people soured so much on him, and it's just crazy to me. Like, he had over 800 yards and 8 touchdowns in his rookie season. Like, a couple of years ago, we'd be ecstatic about that. But with the way that some rookies have exploded lately, it's kind of looked at as a disappointing season, which I feel like it's still a really good rookie season, and I still saw a lot on tape where I'm excited about him. So with that being said, this year, like, if it's not the 102 or 101, like, I'm going to hold on to Marvin Harrison. I think
so you're happy giving up 103 for him.
No, I would only give up 101 or 102. If it's 103, I'm going to keep Harrison. Okay.
So you would accept 101 or 102 if you had Harrison on your roster. And if you were dealing for him, you'd be happy to give up 103. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Good answer. Good answer. Let's take a first break. And when we come back, we're going to dive into the 2025 draft class. We are back. Matt Cooper, I feel like I made you sit there and just listen for a couple minutes. So I'll get you answer the next question. We know we all need a little bit of practice at just sitting and listening on occasion.
Do.
Myself
I do,
definitely included. So I wanted to ask you, I want to start with running back. And this first question kind of gets to the reason I'm starting with running back. Most of the people I've talked to about the 2025 class, and I think Matthew kind of indicated that in his earlier answer about the depth at the running back position. Do we all agree that this is, relatively speaking, the best position in this class?
Yeah, I do. I've already graded 3 guys with my film grade that would have been my RB1 last year. And there's still a number of intriguing names I haven't even studied yet. So it's a deep and top heavy running back class. At the elite, probably the 101 is going to be Ashton Jeanty in your Superflex, even in Superflex leagues. And I've got him like a full 10 points ahead of my RB1 in last year's class. And in terms of my film grade, I think he's a pretty elite running back prospect. My comp for him was Marshawn Lynch, which, he had a pretty good NFL career, I'd say. So yeah, it's a really strong class and I'm excited about it. I think the dynasty landscape kind of needs it because outside of the top 5 guys, there's a lot of question marks.
Well, it's the way I look at it is, I think you said 5, and that's probably about right. And then you have elite old backs and unproven young backs, and we need a few more elite young backs and some guys that we thought were maybe aren't. He mentioned the name Ashton Jeanty. Like Matthew, that's been the guy that I've heard talked about as 101 since really the last 4 months. So I guess my question is, let's assume that the NFL agrees. We go through the entire process and he gets round 1 draft capital, which doesn't happen for running backs anymore. How high should he rank in dynasty running back ranks if that's the case?
I can totally justify putting him in the top 5 from the get-go. He's probably the highest graded guy that I've ever scouted fully. I will say, like, one thing I've kind of kept coming back to, especially with the running backs, like it's really going to depend on landing spot. If he goes somewhere where I just don't like it, then I can see putting him outside the top 5, like top 7, top 9. But if he goes to a spot like, let's say Minnesota or the Cowboys, something like that, where there's a clear need, there's no absolute workhorse, I can totally justify putting him in the top 5.
I like it. I think I wrote earlier this year that I think it's possible that he could get all the way to 3. I can't imagine ranking him ahead of Bijan or ahead of Gibbs. But other than that, anything is possible in the words of Kevin Garnett. Matt, we'll start with you on this, but I want both of you to answer. And Matt Cooper gets the first answer. So Matthew Rupert, you're going to have to kind of play off him. But who are your favorite backs in this class besides Jeanty?
Yeah, so I'll go with, as far as a top guy, like the guy that's probably my number 2 is Omarion Hampton. I think just an elite power back. He sheds so many tackles. He's so much fun to watch. And, enough explosiveness to his game. He's not the most elusive back in the world, but he can change directions pretty well for being a 220 pounder. And, but he doesn't look to. He's not looking to make people miss. He's looking to smash them in the mouth. That's his run style. Which is why I said he's really fun to watch. So Omarion Hampton right now is probably my number 2 guy. And then my favorite sleeper is Cam Skattebo out of Arizona State. We did him on our bonus show for the subscribers a couple weeks ago. And all 3 of us on our podcast were just in love with what we saw from Cam Skattebo. Just really, really high level contact balance, more burst than I was expecting to see from him. And great vision and patience, can catch passes. So I think right now the ADP on him, I mean, January ADP doesn't mean anything, but people, you'd 3rd or 4th round, you could probably still get Skattebo. I think by the time all is said and done, he's not going to be a sleeper anymore. I think people are going to come around on him. I can't see him going any later than the second round of a rookie draft. But right now, he's my guy, and I'm super high on Cam Skattebo.
Matthew, let's take those names out of the equation then. Who's your favorite back left?
I'd say Travion Henderson. To me, he just fits the NFL today so well. He's so explosive. He can do so much in the passing game as well. He breaks off the long runs. He's very elusive. And I feel like people just forget that he was clearly the consensus RB1 last year before he decided to go back to Ohio State. And then he had to split time with Jenkins this year. So he's, not this shiny new object, but to me, he's still such a talent, and he fits today's NFL so well. If he has a really good landing spot, like I can totally see him ended up being my RB2 at the end of the process.
Okay. Speaking of RB2, and I don't think the RB2 is probably going to be the 102 in most rookie drafts, but we did have a question from the chat. Zippy and Samuel says, would you rather have the 102 or JSN?
I'm a big JSN guy. I absolutely loved his tape, and I felt like I knew he was going to break out in year 2 because we kind of expected with the situation that it wouldn't be a stellar year 1. Right. That being said, after our scouting last week, I'm still going to keep the 102. And
Matt Cooper, do you agree?
It's really close. I agree with everything he said. I love Jackson Smith and Jigba as a prospect, and we saw the breakout. The player he's alluding to, we scouted Travis Hunter this past week, and there's, I don't think most people are considering him 102 right now, partially because of the question mark of how much wide receiver is he going to play, but we were blown away. I had him graded higher than Malik Neighbors in my film grades as a wide receiver. So I hope he plays a lot of wide receiver in the NFL, and I'm pretty bullish on him as a prospect. I think it's a really hard call for me between JSN or spending the 102 on Travis Hunter at this point. It's early in the process.
I was still writing about baseball a little bit back when Shohei Ohtani came to be. And we had this huge crisis in fantasy baseball with how are we going to score this guy who's racking up points or categories as both a hitter and a pitcher. And in most leagues, that's not going to matter. But you did mention earlier that you guys put together some IDP stuff. He's an elite prospect as a defensive back as well. And I've been in some, like I remember when J.J. Watt was playing a little bit of tight end or Vrabel, and we were kind of having some discussions. Can we count these touchdowns? And I've always been like, yes, anything they do on the field should count. So if you guys are commissioner of some IDP leagues, are you going to find a way to make sure that Travis Hunter is getting points for both what he does on offense and what he does on defense?
Yes, and he would be a very clear 101.
Agreed.
I love it. Absolutely love it. And I think like people worry about, I think the kids say OP about him being too OP because of that. But he should be if he's good enough to do that. That's kind of the point of this game is rewarding greatness. And he's going to bring a greatness possibly that we've not ever seen. I hope that he doesn't go to a team that runs fun and says, no, we're going to play him 5 plays a game on offense and he's going to play defensive back the whole game. But that's possible. Let's go over to his teammate at Colorado. We'll move to the quarterback position. And we'll just start with probably an easy question. Matthew Rupert, Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders?
I'm still early on in the process. I haven't scouted my full 8 to 10 games, but from what I've seen so far, to me, it's clearly Cam Ward. It's funny, too, because when I was scouting Travis Hunter and scouting Xavier Restrepo, the Miami wide receiver, and obviously Travis Hunter of Colorado, I kind of came away with the opposite because, you get to see the quarterback some when you're scouting the wide receivers. I thought I'd like Sanders a little bit more, but when I got into it more, I really liked Cam Ward. Plays too much hero ball for me.
Right.
And that was the thing that kept on coming up when I was watching Xavier Restrepo. But when he plays, within the system and on time, I thought he had really good touch. A lot of guys that have that rocket arm really struggle to kind of throttle down, not throw a laser to the running back on a check down or, not being able to throw it over the middle linebacker or over the middle of the field. Like they just don't know how to throw a changeup, basically.
Right.
He showed me the ability to do that. And then he can throw it any arm angle, off platform. If he's got a defensive tackle coming into his lap, like he doesn't have to step into the throw and he can sidearm it around him. I saw that multiple times on tape. So he has a lot of intriguing aspects to his game to where his ceiling is just going to be so much higher. And if he gets paired up with a really good offensive coordinator and coaching staff, like if Ben Johnson does go to the Raiders, right, and they end up taking Cam Ward, I'm going to be a lot higher on him than I am even right now. But with all that being said, I do like Sanders a little bit more than I was expecting.
Right.
He has to go to a specific system. He can't be, play action, deep shots down the field. Like you can't build that kind of offense around him, but like a West Coast system where he's throwing a bunch of intermediate passes on time, I think that's the kind of game that he can thrive in.
So Matt Cooper, I want to ask you, and this may just sound dumb, and you can tell me, Heath, that's a dumb question, but is there? I've heard a lot of people talk about Cam Ward in this upside sense, these types of plays that he can make that make you dream about who he could be. Mm-hmm. We've really been burnt as a community, I feel like, over the last 3 or 4 years, chasing upside at this position and ending up with guys who are no longer starting quarterbacks. Is there a possibility that Shedeur Sanders is a better NFL quarterback and we're drafting Cam Ward? Because I think Cam Ward over Sanders at this point is going to be pretty close to consensus for fantasy football purposes. But is that just a fantasy football thing?
Again, like Rupert said, we're kind of, we started scouting prospects December 1st. And so we're a month and a half in, but still have 3.5 months to go before the draft. And so I have not dug into these quarterbacks yet with the all 22. So I'm going to withhold judgment there on that. But I think from what I saw live watch, and I do play Devy, so I've kind of had eyes on these guys for a few years now. I think a lot of people assume Shedeur Sanders is really mobile because of his dad and his name. He's not that mobile. No. He's got some escapability in the pocket, but he's kind of looking to escape to throw. He's not really going to run. So there's not a lot of upside there as far as like a Konami code. His arm is not that strong. So he kind of profiles more as like a game manager type.
Right.
And he holds the ball way too long. That's my concern. If you're a game manager type, but you're not processing the field quickly enough, I've got concerns. So I don't think Shedeur Sanders is going to be it's not an exciting quarterback class overall. These are the top 2 prospects, and they both have some pretty major warts.
And I guess that's where I was going to go next is, and I'll stay with you, like Michael Penix over both of these guys.
I maybe still lean Ward. We'll see when I dig into the all 22. I reserve the right to change my mind about that. But I think because of the upside, like you said, because Penix is basically a statue back there, I might be more interested in what Cam Ward could be. But I could change my mind on that pretty quick.
Matthew Rupert, are there any other quarterbacks in this class that matter for fantasy football?
I don't think so. Maybe Jackson Dart, potentially. I haven't studied him yet, but I've seen some intriguing things from him. But from everything else I've seen, I just don't see much outside of the top 2.
That's a perfectly good answer. And it really, if you're in a super flex league and you need a quarterback, it really kind of lends itself to maybe you should be trying to trade back and pick up a 2026 pick, or definitely a 2027 pick. Now, we've said that type of thing before about positions, and it's turned out to look foolish. So we'll see how we feel about it after the NFL draft. They may just draft 4 quarterbacks in the first 10 picks or something. So let's move over to wide receiver. And Matt Cooper, I'll start with you. You can both answer this question, though. I've got Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Ladd McConkey, Marvin Harrison Jr., Xavier Worthy, Rome Odunze. They're all inside of my top 21 Dynasty wide receivers. This was an exceptional class. My question is, how many wide receivers from this class, 2025, are going to end up in my top 20 in the Dynasty wide receiver rankings?
Yeah. I think Travis Hunter, Tet McMillan, and Luther Burden all have a pretty good shot at that, being first round picks, going to a good team. I think they have traits that should translate to fantasy points. Ibuka has a shot if he gets to the right landing spot and is kind of a high volume PPR guy. And then I guess my outside deep sleeper to join that group, I wouldn't say that this is likely to happen, but it could, is Isaiah Bond out of Texas. Worthy, you just mentioned, snuck into that group. Bond is a similar player, slight frame, but so fast and explosive, great after the catch. So if he lands with the right team, gets the right draft capital, I could see him inserting himself into that conversation. Those are the guys at this point. Now, there's more that I haven't studied in the class yet, but those are the ones at this point that I think at least have an outside shot to get there.
Matthew Rupert, would you mostly agree with that list? Anybody he missed or anybody you think that doesn't belong?
I totally agree. I think Travis Hunter just absolutely gets into that list. I think Tet McMillan and Luther Burden are going to be very location dependent. I think Burden in particular has to go to the right spot. And then Tet McMillan out of Arizona State.
So you guys
Arizona.
You can't stop saying his name. So
yeah,
are you getting a higher degree of confidence that he's going to be a wide receiver in the NFL?
I'm putting I put down my flag on it. I think he's going to play full-time wide receiver, and then my prediction is he'll play more partial cornerback, obvious passing situations in the game when the other team's trying to come back. That's my prediction. I think he's just too talented. The game revolves around the offense and scoring points. All the money's there, so I think that's where he's going to end up.
I wonder if it's as simple as does an offensive head coach or a defensive head coach draft him? It's one of those defensive head coaches drafts.
I think what we were talking about the other night on our show was he's just so good. How do you not use him at wide receiver? I mean, I don't know how to evaluate defensive back, so I can't speak to that. Right. But when we watch the wide receiver tape, I think he's worthy of a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, even if all he did was play wide receiver. He's that good. I mentioned I had a higher grade on him than Malik Neighbors. So that's where it's like, I can't imagine him not being used at wide receiver. It would just be such an egregious miss by whatever team drafted him. So that's kind of, I think, the upside too, because he's only been playing the position for 2 years. He started playing wide receiver in 2022 at a D1 football school, and he went for like 800 yards and 5 touchdowns in his first year playing the position. So in this year, he went for almost 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns in his second year at the position, and he's still learning how to run routes and stuff. So like, he's just such a freak athlete, and he's more polished already than I would expect from a second-year player. But we definitely haven't seen his ceiling at that position.
Chaff is just reading my mind. I'm sorry. The next question is asking you guys your favorite sleeper wide receivers, and he's in the chat, in the YouTube chat, giving us his: Torrey Horton, Jack Beck, and Jaylin Royals. You guys looked at any of these guys, and who are your favorite sleepers? We'll start with you, Matthew Rupert.
I have not studied those three yet, so now I'm excited to really dive into them. I do have a favorite sleeper that I studied actually this morning and graded out. Jaylin Noel from Iowa State. Really, really love his game. He plays bigger than he is. He's quite nuanced in his route running. He can win contested catches. He tracks the ball very well. Just really, really liked his game. Particularly, we really put a heavy emphasis on route running and being able to get open, because that's how you really earn targets and especially get a lot of points in PPR leagues. And I feel like he did that very well. And he did that at 3 different positions: inside, outside, slot. Didn't matter where he was, he could win. So that's a sleeper that I'm really going to target this year.
Matt Cooper?
Yeah, if I had to call out a different name, I would say maybe Kyron Lacey from LSU. He is 6'2", 200 plus pounds, profiles as an X receiver, was a pretty good route runner, and pretty good athlete, good ball skills. Loved, like, he did so many sideline toe taps and wide catch radius. So there was a lot that I liked. He's an older prospect, was a 5th-year senior, but Kyron Lacey who I think is going to, if I'm remembering correctly, I think he's accepted a Senior Bowl invite. Don't quote me on that, but I think he has a chance to rise throughout the draft process and be a pretty good sleeper name.
I want to move over to the tight end position, Matthew Rupert, and I put in the notes, I don't know what to say about these guys. No, there's obviously not a Brock Bowers in this class, but I do see a lot of mocks with tight ends going in the first round. So are there some guys that you can get excited about from a fantasy football perspective at the tight end position?
Yeah, I think the top two guys, Colston Loveland from Michigan and Tyler Warren from Penn State, like you said, and there probably never will be another Brock Bowers.
Right.
Absolutely generational guy. But I do think these top two guys, I haven't, given them film grades yet. But from what I've studied, I really like. They kind of, I think Tyler Warren kind of profiles kind of similar to TJ Hawkinson. Not the fastest guy, but can just do everything. And I'm really excited, and because of how good this running back class is and how scarce it seems like that position is, we really need to reload our rosters. I think those two guys could be at the end of the first round or top of the second round. So I think there's really good value there potentially.
Any other thoughts you have on the tight end position this year, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, no Brock Bowers, but it's deeper. Like after Brock Bowers last year, you're not looking at another tight end until Ben Sinnott in the third. He went second round in the NFL draft, but was going third round rookie drafts. And then Jatavian Sanders, we thought might be an intriguing prospect, but he went day 3 and didn't really do much as a rookie. So I think this year there's probably 3 or 4 guys that are interesting to me. He mentioned Loveland and Warren, and Loveland really stood out to me as I was cutting up film for the Dynasty nerds. And I just think as a route runner, there's so much that he did that was masked by how bad Michigan's offense was this year. I mean, but he's everything that you're looking for from a receiving tight end. He's got great ability to go up and get these contested catches. He can run routes. He's fast for his position, expected to get the draft capital. So I like Colston Loveland out of Michigan. Some that he didn't mention, Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green. He is also a Senior Bowl guy, I believe, and very athletic, a little undersized, but very athletic. My friend Mike Anthony, he texted me the other day. He's got on the Dynasty Dogs podcast, said he reminded him of Delaney Walker, a little undersized, but athletic. And I could see that comp. And Mason Taylor, who actually I believe is related to Miami Dolphins great defensive end Jason Taylor. He's out of LSU, and he is an intriguing, athletic, moved around the formation, not much of a blocker, also a little undersized, I think. But Mason Taylor is a name to monitor as well in this class.
We had a good question from the chat from Joe. It says, if you were starting a Dynasty league today, so I assume let's assume you're doing a startup draft right now, when would you do your rookie draft? Matthew Rupert, I'll let you answer that one.
I used to be do it as close to the season as possible so you get more information. And the last couple of years, I've completely flipped on that. And I want to do the rookie draft like literally the next day after the actual NFL draft wraps up.
I like doing it the week after. We usually start ours because I'm producing content that first week. We usually start ours like the Monday, 8 days after the draft or something. But Matt Cooper, I want to kind of a different question. Do you let's say you're starting a Dynasty league in July. How do you feel about when you're including rookies in the startup? Or if you have one of these where you have the startup, and I like to have the startup and the rookie draft separate just because you get to do more drafting. But how do you go about determining who gets what pick in what draft? Because obviously the first person in the startup draft shouldn't get the first pick in the redraft or in the rookie draft. So how do you how do you feel about that?
So my favorite 2 ways of doing it. One, if it's in July and you already the NFL draft has happened and you've got landing spots and people have had time to do their scouting and all that, I'm totally fine with just including rookies in the startup draft at that point. And that's probably how I would do it, just to keep it simple. But if you really wanted to have that second draft and have, create some more fun for yourself and maybe some more trading opportunities, and you wanted to do it that way, I would include, I would basically have people, if you wanted to take a rookie pick, you would take a kicker as a placeholder. And so the first kicker that goes in the startup draft is the rookie 101. Second kicker that gets taken in the startup is the 102, so on and so forth. And that creates some fun because you can trade up and down later in the rookie draft. And it provides a little bit of flexibility too when you're building your team, because you're going, okay, well, I just took the rookie 102. That could either be this person or this person. And so I'm not locked into like, okay, I just took a running back. It's like, it's a mystery box, it
Right.
could be a running back. It could be a wide receiver. And so it gives you some flexibility in how you're building your team. And that can be a fun way to approach it as well.
I like that a lot. I've definitely done it that way. Matt B in the chat says no including rookies 1 week following if late in the season. Do it the opposite order as a startup for the rookies, and I've done it that way as well.
Yeah,
I think I prefer the drafting your draft slot as a part of the startup, but there's lots of good ways to do it, and
it's
and
more
really,
work for the commish, but it's extra fun.
And as long as Azer's the commish, we really don't care if it's more work. Listen, you guys have been fantastic today on the 2025 rookie class. Matt Cooper, I wanted to give you one more chance. Just tell everybody what they can find at Couch Scouts, where they can find your podcast, everything they need to know.
Yeah, so if you want to find the podcast, search Couch Scouts, all one word. Couch like you sit on, scout like you're scouting prospects, Couch Scouts. And we're on YouTube, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the platforms. For the website, it's couchscouts.com. Pretty simple, couchscouts.com. And if you missed it at the beginning of the show, we are offering 50% off for the first 50 people that use the promo code FFT. So we want to give you guys a chance to check out our website. We got a lot of great tools on there, and all 22 film room, a rookie guide that's going to come out closer to the draft. That'll be the ultimate cheat sheet for you for your rookie drafts. Some bonus podcasts that are for members only, and definitely would love for you guys to get in there and check it out. We also, I didn't mention this earlier on the show, we have a free Discord. So this is just a place we want to get to know the people that listen to our show. So it's a good community. There's over 100 people in there talking Dynasty all the time. People post their trades for reactions and advice. We react to news. We chat in there on game day as the games are happening live. It's a really great community. It's totally free. So that link, I believe, is going to be in the show notes on this show. And we would love to have you come join our community Discord as well.
He's Matt Cooper. I also Matthew Rupert. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having us, Heath.
We are not done yet. I'm going to let these guys go. We're going to take our second break, and I'll be answering your emails after the break. All right, we are back. We had a bunch of emails that came in right after the season. I really appreciate you guys being so engaged. I wanted to make sure I took a chance to answer a couple of those. Looks like Thomas has also flagged a couple of chat questions. We'll see if I've got time to run through those in kind of a rapid fire fashion as well. First, an email from James in DC, maybe more of a suggestion, but he asked if I'd changed my rankings process for 2025. And I've mentioned this before. I put together a trade chart. And one of the most difficult things is putting together rankings, especially top 150s or trade charts that reflect value for both contenders and rebuilders. And he said what he would really like to have is rankings for both contenders and rebuilders. And yeah, I would like to do that. It also sounds like twice as much work. I'm going to try to find a way to better incorporate that. But I think also the thing that you have to remember is most trades that are happening in dynasty leagues are not happening between contenders and contenders. In fact, a lot of contenders won't even trade with another contender. Most of them are happening between contenders and rebuilders. So we do need something that compares the value for those two groups of people. But maybe I'll find some way to highlight the players who are more valuable to rebuilders than they are in my rankings, or contenders. I generally like to say, like, if you're a contender, then the running backs are more valuable than they are listed here. The old players are more valuable than they are listed here. And if you are not, then those guys should not be on your roster in the first place. I'm considering one area I have changed my rankings in 2025 is just the longevity of the running back and wide receiver position. We'd already adjusted a couple of years ago that quarterbacks seem to be able to play this game longer than they used to be able to. We saw this year some older running backs really excel. I mean, Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley made me look like an idiot. And I think the question that we have to ask is that a sports science thing? Is that a medicine thing? Or is that just Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley thing? And so that's kind of what I'm trying to evaluate. But I'll probably extend the age curves a little bit for the running back position and maybe even the wide receiver position. We had Simon sent a message from Canada. Thank you, Simon. Thank you to everybody who's listening from Canada. Says, do you have any thoughts? And this is a summary because it was a long message. Any thoughts on unique ways to determine rookie order? And then he asked if I like snake or linear for rookie draft. And I think one of the things that Simon said in his message was, what's the purpose of a rookie draft? Distributing talent with the most talent going to the worst teams, or fun and engagement? Because he has a 100-yard dash that's partially determined by a luck ranking that determines his rookie draft order. And I think it really is just dependent on your league. For me, I'm a pretty competitive guy, and I would get pretty irritated if I tried to tank and then I got the 6th pick in the draft. I guess that would drive away tanking. For me, I just like to go by record. I'm okay if you want to use total points available, especially if it's a best ball league. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm okay if you want to do it however you want to, but for me personally, I don't really want to be in a league where it's just random what the draft order is going to be next year. I find my fun in actually playing the game of fantasy football. And I do prefer a linear order for rookie drafts. Azer's the commissioner of one of our leagues, and he changed it, I believe, to where round 4 goes in snake order. I still haven't figured out why he did that. But again, it's whatever your league prefers. I would just go linear throughout the order of the draft. We had a message from Steve here. He has the 101 and the 107 in this year's draft. He has 3 firsts in 2026. That's exciting. Man, I love rebuilding. Looking at the roster, would you just take Jeanty or consider McMillan with the first pick? What about the 107? I have an early 2025 second as well. He was thinking maybe take the wide receiver because he has 3 firsts next year, and maybe he'll just play for 2026. And I think it really comes down to how competitive do you think that you can be this year? It also comes down to how big do you think the difference is between Ashton Jeanty and everyone else? Because in a coin flip situation, I'm going to take the wide receiver. There's no probably about it. If Ashton Jeanty is a top 15 pick in the NFL draft and gets a great landing spot, and we think this is a generational fantasy football running back for the next 8 years, then or 7 years or whatever it is, I don't really care that the wide receiver might play 3 more years. I'm going to go ahead and take Ashton Jeanty unless there's just absolutely no chance. Like if I'm on a 2027 timeline, then I think you probably try to trade down and accumulate even more picks, but I wouldn't want to pass up on that talent without getting any sort of bonus for it. We had Rich with a rapid fire. He had to send me 3 questions. Let's see how quick we can get through these. There's a bunch of 2024 rookies that did not make much of an impact this year. He highlights Keon Coleman, JJ McCarthy, Ben Sinnott, Troy Franklin. Which ones do you think have the most potential for 2025 and beyond in a super flex league? I think the answer is still JJ McCarthy. I was really excited about him coming into the league. I think we saw that Kevin O'Connell's system can kind of make just about anybody good. And I kind of wonder if maybe what Sam Darnold did at the end of the year makes it more likely that we're going to see JJ McCarthy early. And then I generally lean towards, if guys were not productive as rookies, give me a good reason. Is it because they had terrible quarterback play? Is it because they were injured? It was because in JSN's case, they were just kind of stuck behind somebody on the depth chart. I think that would probably lend itself more towards a Ben Sinnott because he just didn't really get the opportunity. And we saw that with Trey McBride, ironically enough, behind Zach Ertz like Ben Sinnott was this year. So, and also I think you should be a little more patient with tight ends. Something I've said that for a few years now is with rookie tight ends, I'd almost rather just wait and trade for them in year 2. That didn't work out very well with Brock Bowers this year. It would have worked out great with Trey McBride a couple of years ago. Now, second question from Rich. We know receivers generally have longer careers than running backs. how much should you factor this in for rookie drafts? It's I just talked about this, I guess, but it's more than a tiebreaker. It's not everything, and it really depends on how competitive you think you are this year. If you're a true competitive team, then maybe it is only just a tiebreaker. If you are a true rebuilder, then it's a huge difference. I'd much rather have the wide receivers and the quarterbacks. And then do you have any general rules for deciding if your team is a contender? Man, I do this with Twitter a lot, and I don't like to do this with guests, but I don't remember who said this. Somebody said on this podcast just earlier this year, if you have 3 top 30 players, then you can consider yourself a contender. That sounds good enough to me. Like I'd like to have some elite talent, and I need to look around the rest of the league and say, like, how many really truly elite teams are? Like some of these leagues I'm in, there's 1 or 2 or 3 teams that have just built up so much talent that their biggest problem is who to start at 3 different positions every week. And so then I'm going to have to feel much, much better about my team in that type of league than a league where it kind of looks wide open going into the year. We had a couple questions left from the chat that were starred. Miguel, Tyrone Tracy, 1 QB, half PPR. What can we trade him away for? I like the instinct here, Miguel, because Tyrone Tracy is exactly the type of running back who has been known to get replaced. Now, I think I'm a little bit lower than consensus on him, but I'll just kind of tell you, if you're a contender, then maybe someone like a TJ Hawkinson, possibly someone like, oh boy, a Ramondre Stevenson. If you're a rebuilder, I would be looking for I don't think you're going to get a first. But if I could get a top 15 pick, maybe a pick with the first 3 picks of round 2, I would be willing to do that for Tyrone Tracy. And then we had Jamie also in the chat, says he's got a Dynasty PPR 1 QB league, 10 teams. Oh, wow. He's got a lot of really great wide receivers. Chase, Nico, Drake London, Marvin Harrison, AJ Brown. He's got a lot of really good running backs. Gibbs, Taylor, Chase Brown, and Kyron Williams. No picks this year. Thinking about trading AJ Brown. And I guess my question would be, what are you trading him for? This looks like a team that should be a true contender. You got a lot of great players. I don't really want to trade AJ Brown for picks if I've got a chance to win a championship this year. So I might be okay not having any picks in this year's draft. I do think that Brown at 28 years old is the kind of guy that you might start thinking about moving away from. But I'm not really feeling trading a top 12 wide receiver in a league where I have a chance to win it all. That's going to do it for your questions. It's kind of a mini mailbag at the end of today's show. Again, thanks to the Matts. Go get you a subscription to Couch Scouts. Thanks to Thomas. Thanks to all you who are active in the chat. We will talk to you next Tuesday and Friday.